Hi, everyone. Welcome to Michael Van Cleek's ongoing architecture series. Today we have a little bit of an emergency broadcast, if you will. Although, have you all noticed that the emergency broadcast systems haven't even gone into use? Isn't this the type of situation when they should be used? Well, that's part of what we're talking about today. I watched the World Health Organization's daily update today. It's every 2 days, doing a press conference on the coronavirus. They've been obviously monitoring it from the beginning. The World Health Organization is, of course, concerned with science, and this whole system is really testing their processes. They're having to learn new innovation processes on the fly to quickly get supplies out there. And now they're having to respond to the collapse of supply chains that are affecting our medical systems. And those collapses are being affected by closing borders and by governments taking over protective results. A reminder, the WHO has emphasized the way the disease is transmitted is through contact with an infected individual showing signs, either contact from them sneezing on you or from them sneezing on a surface that you then touch and put in your mouth. Obviously, it's incredibly virulent in that process, but that's how it's processed. Walking up the mountain, walking by somebody 5 feet away, 6 feet away is what the US saying, 3 feet is what the WHO says. You're fine. Be safe. Be fine. Don't isolate yourselves and don't exacerbate the problems that are cascading into a failure that's putting our health professionals at risk. So the WHO in today's conference specifically called for architectures to help solve the problems that they're experiencing right now. And they use the word architecture, and I feel the call to service. And it's a time for me to teach others how to architect and one approach that I have, and to show you that, sometimes you have to do things quickly. We're used to architectures taking weeks and going up on the shelf. I'm going to put something together with you right now as quickly as I possibly can. I'm a terrible artist. I'm a much better talker, but I'm going to try to use Lucidchart to illustrate a architecture to solve a problem. I've drawn this out. I always use my big notepad, and I've started with, let me get this on the camera correctly, just pen and ink, showing the process, walking my way through it. I'm going to try to replicate this on the screen right here in Lucidchart. The idea here, looking for an architecture to help solve the problem. We have collapsing supply chains, and we have people who are not getting properly informed, people who are submitting themselves to panic. We have governments that are exacerbating that situation. We have media organizations that are exacerbating that situation. How do we correct that? How do we calm the hysteria so that we can open up those supply chains and can approach this intelligently? So I've been a proponent of the World Health Organization. They are the organization that is fighting this disease. It is their mission, and they are dedicated to it. And I feel one approach that we should take, that we should experiment with, is getting people directed to the World Health Organization to get valid news and scientific recommendations and empower people with information to make their own decisions. As we're seeing out on the streets, trust in governments, trust in institutions is collapsing. The WHO is still a trusted organization, and let's funnel people to the WHO so that they can get the information they need to make the correct choices for their current situation. So here, I'm focusing this on the US because that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm, of course, seeing the hysteria. So I've put the US citizens right here, and I'm testing out Lucidchart to see how fast it updates for you compared to me. I might have to unplug and replug my iPad. I've got a direct connection here. It's a little slow. It's about a 15-second connection. So we have US citizens over here, and we have the WHO up here, and we need to get information from US citizens to the WHO. So the WHO, first of all, we need our government, our authority figures, whoever they are, leaders. I'm going to go ahead and talk about public service agencies here. Oh, ha. Well, I seem to have lost, so I'm also learning a new software here as I go with the Lucidchart on my iPad. I've used it before. Let's see, when I go to type in, I'm going to type in on this actor right here. I'm also using my pen. Let's do it. Let's do public service agencies, or public service leaders. So we take the public service leaders here because we know that people are relying on leaders and they're relying on information from trusted sources. And the public service leaders should be, and I don't know how I ended up with that little contortion on the body. We'll figure that out later. The public service leaders need to get information. So let's have them looking for the right arrow here on the UML diagram. Uh, as I said, we're all learning. We got a line, of course. So we want a line here, and we want this to go from the public service leaders to the World Health Organization, getting information. Okay, so that's where we start. Actually, it seems to put a second line there. So we get info from the trusted source. Okay, this is actually a two-way street, so we're going to edit that line so it's a double-headed. Okay, line style. There's an endpoint style. Great. Well, all right, I can't necessarily get the arrow to do exactly what I want to do right now, but we'll leave it there. So we start with the service leaders getting their information from the World Health Organization. Then, how do we get that information from the leaders in a trusted fashion to U.S. citizens? Right now, trust is at a premium. Well, interestingly, we have not seen any use of the emergency broadcast systems and the like, Amber Alerts, things like that. So, emergency broadcast systems. And Amber Alerts. Okay, so that system. So here's one of the mysteries of the architecture. An assumption I'm making here is that public service leaders have access to that system. So I'll put one end of this arrow here at the service leaders, put the other end of this arrow over here. So, and we have the service leaders activate communication and tell people to get info from the WHO at www.who.int. Okay, so let me see if I can't. I'll slide this down a little bit, so, and then see if I can drag this label over a little bit. Okay. All right, we're still figuring out some of the gaps of Lucid. So the emergency broadcast systems, of course, reach lots of people. So we're going to take this arrow and move it down and go that those citizens being broadcast out to the people. Now, when that is broadcast to the people, here's where architecture is going to come in. This is just a simple straight line business flow right now, but then all these people are going to want to access the WHO, right? What's going to happen if all these people try to access the world? You know, if we send out an alert right now in a heightened panic situation and tell people to go look at the WHO's website, what's going to happen? It's likely going to fall down. We know that the WHO, we know that their site is, not built to last through this type of system. So we need to replicate that site. We need to replicate that information. And that's where architecture comes in. Here, at the same time that there is a move to educate public service leaders by the WHO to use the WHO, we need architects and technologists to come out here and work on replicating the WHO around the world. I'll put that as a cloud. So here we have replicated WHO sites. So now, instead of people going to the WHO, we're going to make copies of this. So copy, it's your duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. And now we have multiple WHO websites so that everybody can, there's distributed access, people can get the information faster, we're able to reduce the number of hops around the network. We need to have some sort of replication technology in place from the World Health Organization, and I think there are tools out there. This is where, we're looking for expertise, but this needs to come out. We need to have the site, replication processes right here, sending the site out to multiple, multiple points in the AWS cloud, for example. And this is the type of thing that, the WHO site, if we look at their site, it has video and links to video, and a lot of that video is then on YouTube. So we don't have to replicate that. We don't have to create this massive replication infrastructure to support YouTube. We're going to rely on YouTube to give us the replication for the videos. But we need to be able to replicate things like the PDFs, like the content, all the things the WHO has out there that are giving directions, and we need to be able to replicate their daily updates. As well, we need to be able to respond as soon as fresh information comes up on the WHO site. Obviously, following this top process is going to, if public service leaders come out there and use the Amber Alert system to get people to the WHO, it's going to create a big rush on the WHO. What we're looking for at the architecture and how we know this is successful is if we see the hysteria rate go down, if we see people engaging with the content, and we see people we survey for global understanding of the underlying issues. If people start to understand that they play a role in the supply chain, then that can impact their behaviors and the choices that they make that are keeping us from getting medical supplies to emergency responders. This, of course, is something I'm very sensitive to. My wife is a nurse. So having those supply chains right now be constrained by closing borders and unnecessary isolation is causing us problems. So we know that one of the goals of this architecture is to solve that issue, to solve the lack of faith in the system, and to give people good information, and to solve the panic. Really, we have to solve the panic. So I'm going to blow up the diagram here so it's a little clearer. And again, it very much replicates what I did here, just on paper. So we've just got a talking point. From here, what I would want to do is empower the people who have control at every point in this system. Ask questions. What is the status of the WHO site? How is it replicated? What is the status of the emergency broadcast systems? Can we use them for this purpose? How do we use them? Who are the leaders that need to be supplying this information? Understanding this flow, understanding who the citizens are we're going to get the information to, and understanding how they're going to access this, all of that is critical at a time like this. So this here is one architecture and one flow that I'm proposing to help solve some of the problems we have right now. So this is just a sort of emergency response. Again, thank you so much for joining. Think about how you can use your work to help the world today. My inspiration today came from my neighbor, Ron. I was walking down to the bakery and Ron said, well, what do you do for a living, Michael? And I'm like, I'm a technical architect. He's like, well, how can you apply that architecture? How can you apply your work to what is it you do? And how can you apply that work to solving our problems? And this is an example of that work. Conceiving of this and then diving into each step of this, each link, every line on here has questions embedded in it. Every box in here has a question that needs to be answered and a metric to measure to see if we're being successful. And the whole of this solves some larger problems. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview, and this is necessarily frantic because I'm doing it 15 minutes after the WHO, 20 minutes after the WHO closed their press conference today. I'm trying to show you how to quickly use tools like Twitch that we're using to broadcast, like Lucidchart that I'm using to diagram. How can you, as an architect, use your skills and abilities to help us in a time of need? Thank you very much for joining me, and join me throughout the weekend here on Twitch because I'll be DJing. I'm going to put on a whole different hat, and I'm going to show you music has never been more powerful than it is right now. Come join me. Let me see if there's any questions back in the chat. No questions yet, but I do have some viewers. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and stop this and then record and then upload the video to YouTube so people can learn about how to use architecture to solve our problems. Thank you for joining me.